Hi everyone, welcome to this Socrata Hangout. My name is Bridget Quigg. I'm the Communications Manager here at Socrata, and today we have a great group of people ready to talk to you about the title of our topic, which is Hard Copy is History, Web-Based Reports Save Time and Money. This group is from the Governor Salmon Recovery Office in Washington State, and their host today is our own Andrew Crow. He is the Open Data Consultant for the West Coast of the U.S., and he'll be finding out more about how they turned a 150-page paper report into a website based on open data visualizations that's fully interactive and makes the data more available to citizens. Remember that during this Hangout, you can reach out to us via the comments on the page on Socrata.com where you're watching the Hangout, or if you're watching it on YouTube, you can do the same thing there. You can also reach us at webinars@Socrata.com. We'll be sending your questions to our host, Andrew, to make sure that they get to the panel. And so with that, welcome everyone, and here's Andrew Crow.
Thank you, Bridget. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining today. I want to start by introducing the folks who've joined us for today's Hangout. Start with Jennifer Johnson. Jennifer is from the Governor's Salmon Recovery Office here in the state of Washington. She's a recovery implementation coordinator. And prior to joining the state of Washington, Jennifer spent more than 6 years with NOAA Fisheries. She served as a project coordinator for the Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery Fund. So excited to have Jennifer with us. Also want to introduce Scott Betcher. Scott is with SBGH Partners, but he joined us as a project consultant with Paladin Data Systems. And Scott brings more than 20 years experience creating more efficient solutions to environmental recovery decision-making in Washington State. So Scott's going to contribute a lot to the conversation today. And then lastly, we have Tim Smith. Tim is a senior project consultant with Paladin Data Systems. But even more interesting to specifically today's discussion is that Tim was a principal author of the Washington State Salmon Recovery Act. So very applicable to what we're doing here. In addition, he initiated the Puget Sound Nearshore Ecosystem Restoration Program and Washington Salmon Recovery Lead Entity Program. So needless to say, Scott knows a lot about, or excuse me, Tim knows a lot about fish and their protection. So welcome everybody. Again, thanks for joining. I want to kind of kick it off with, start the conversation with some questions, and really just want to get into the origin of the Salmon Recovery Report. And Jennifer, maybe you can start by giving us some background on the process prior to the digitization of this report, which is really what we're here about, but it'll kind of help us set the stage. Maybe some insight into how often you published and what that process looked like.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. So again, I'm with the Governor's Salmon Recovery Office, and we are part of the Recreation and Conservation Office. And we have a mandate by statute to prepare a consolidated biennial state of salmon in watersheds report. So every 2 years, we need to bring together all the data about salmon and steelhead listed under the Endangered Species Act, as well as the watershed health in Washington State. And in addition to that, we need to bring forward information about what's funded to recover salmon. So all of this is a mandate, and in the past we had produced a paper report. Some beautiful photography, you know, it's basically a book, like a coffee table book of 150 pages or more. And you know, we had done that for about, you know, six times for the last 6 reports. And we had gathered data from a bunch of different agencies and compiled it into this static report, you know, made a lot of copies of it, sent it out, mailed it out. You know, the target audience is elected officials, the governor's office, legislators. We also have a great many salmon recovery partners that have been interested in this report. So that's kind of a little bit of the history and the past.
Thanks, Jennifer. So kind of as a recap, it was it was a physical paper document. You had to print it, you had to mail it out. There's a lot of kind of manual process, as well as all the intricacies of gathering the data and building the reports and creating the content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got stacks of books behind me. I don't know if you can see them, but these are the previous reports. And you know, this time we have a much smaller hard copy executive summary.
That's great. So what kind of piqued the interest in going digital? I mean, what was the driver there? What benefits were you expecting? Give us some insight into why you guys decided to go with a digital report.
Well, the printed report, it was costing us around $56,000 every time to produce it, and then the mailing costs, and then sometimes it sits on a shelf and people aren't looking at it. We really wanted to be able to provide more accessibility to of the data to not just the elected officials, but also to the general public and our salmon recovery partners. So yeah, we wanted to get away from the paper-based report, and we also wanted to support what we call the Washington way, which is we implement the Salmon Recovery Act, and we recover salmon not with a top-down approach, government telling people what to do, but with a locally driven bottom-up approach. And we wanted to be able to collaborate with our partners and look at all the data, and that required some new tools for us to be able to use and to show the data at various scales, locally and statewide and different regions around the state. And so we needed tools that could help us roll that up, and we needed tools that could provide both the summary level and the finer scale. So that's part of why we went this direction.
So it was a combination of there's a lot of cost involved in printing the report and mailing it out. Plus, it was, like you said, it's kind of a summary of the data as opposed to providing access to the data itself for more granular evaluation. So it kind of, your goal was to not only improve access both to the data that underlied it, but as well as hopefully reduce costs, right?
Yeah, and also increase the trust with our local partners. If they can see the data and they can look at it on a platform like data.wa.gov, that makes them feel like we're being honest with them. We all have the same information. We also wanted to be able to collaborate with our partners using a content management system on the web so that they could actually enter data and information themselves, and then we could go back and forth and work with that information, both narrative and quantitative information.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? You're kind of talking about the multiple components of open data. It's access to information, both for external stakeholders as well as internal collaboration across departments, because obviously the problems you guys are solving or reporting on aren't single departments, right? It's interdepartmental, it's cross-departmental.
Absolutely. We have a lot of data from a lot of different organizations. We have a lot of partners, tribal partners, local partners, city and county government, nonprofits, you name it. So we have to work with everybody.
Very exciting.
Andrew?
Yes.
Jennifer, can I add in one of the key challenges I think that I saw in helping with this project?
Yeah, please do, Scott.
As Jennifer pointed out, they have historically produced a paper report, and they produced that report on a production timeline. And what that really effectively means is that at the moment that report is actually published, all the data is out of date. And here you have a locally driven program with biologists out in the field collecting data all the time. And if you're in a paper production mode, you're going to essentially cut off any further contribution of new data 6 months in advance of the publishing date. And so really, when the report finally is published, it is 6 months to a year out of date. And meanwhile, and you have to just sort of live with that. Moving to an open data kind of solution allowed for closer to real-time reporting of data. And I think that is what really was a challenge that we with the old method that generated much more goodwill with the new method.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great segue, Scott. Maybe you can provide us a little bit of insight into what, how you found out about the state's open data portal, data.wa.gov, and kind of the story around why you guys chose to use it. I mean, because from what Jennifer was saying, one of the original goals wasn't this live feed of data. That wasn't really a consideration. It was kind of the costs and access to the raw data itself. But Scott, you brought up a really interesting point in that doing it this way has now provided a living document that is up to date at any time you look at it. So give us a little background on how that connection happened.
Sure. And this was one of those projects where you don't always know what you're going to get. There are corollary benefits that accrue, and then there's corollary challenges. But we'll talk through that. We found out about the tool through the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. They had a briefing on the tool and were interested in using it. The Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife is an entity that is a steward for a whole bunch of data associated with salmon populations. And so they were keenly interested in us using this. So that's how we found out about it, and that's how we applied it.
So Scott, just to jump in and clarify, so the Department of Fish and Wildlife, they directed you guys and said, hey, our data is on data.wa.gov, and we'd like to put it there for your access?
Well, no, they have, like all natural resource agencies, we have legacy data systems, and they had a data system that housed a whole bunch of data, but it didn't have a strong public interface. So we looked to selecting the data out of their legacy system and using the Socrata open data source to provide that public face, the visualization tools, which were much more user-friendly and visually appealing, and we integrated those as iframes into the website that now has become the report. Does that get at what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely. So now when the data is updated on the Socrata Open Data Portal, it updates the visualizations within the website, right? So it's essentially a live feed.
Yeah. So essentially, the populations and the data are placed into an Excel sheet and then uploaded into the Socrata tool, which regenerates the charts automatically in the website. So we have implemented a certain amount of automation that gets people closer to real-time data, and that's what people want. And that was their frustration with the previous report. Now, as I said before, there are corollary benefits that accrue, and then there's also corollary challenges. But now, one of the corollary challenges to think about as people go this way, the benefits are great, absolutely. The challenges are you build an expectation for currency and things being up to date all the time, and now you have to, as an organization, and Jennifer is wrestling with this, implement some policies around how frequently you're going to update and time stamping and those sorts of things. That being said, the strength of having the biologists in the field see their data show up in a report nearly real time does a tremendous amount to build credibility with those external or those regionally distributed folks.
Well, and that's the exciting thing, right? Is now you're focusing on the data and making sure the quality of the data and the feed of data is live, as opposed to the process of spending 6 months actually writing the report.
Correct.
So your strategy has shifted. Tim, maybe you can chime in a little bit there with all your background in helping create policy and support policy, and how do you think this impacts what government can do from this standpoint? I mean, you guys are really breaking new ground here. Do you see this as a repeatable process?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the exciting part about this kind of new approach is that it really does pull across all sectors and kind of the the paradigms and the silos that are within an agency. So, you know, you really have to work across the policy, the management, science, the IT portions of your organization. And one of the things that was interesting to me in watching this process roll out was that in the past, it really has been, you know, the report that is people kind of rally around and talk about, or it's been, if you're just deploying a website, it's the website, the look and feel, and the meetings are about, you know, matching colors and layout and stuff. And here, this transition to this report really put the focus back on the data. That's one of the things that Scott mentioned was all of a sudden, you know, data quality improved overnight over the previous 10 years because all of a sudden the sources, the scientists that were generating this information, you know, knew it was going to be used to communicate directly via the web to all these people, and all of a sudden there was a real focus on that data. And that's what you should be communicating. It should be that the important component is the quality and the story that that information is telling, not, you know, if you got a cool website or not. So I really think that, you know, this approach is repeatable, and I think it's tremendously valuable because it's elevated the status of this report up to a, you know, it's a policy document now. It's a decision support tool. It's not just, you know, hey, here's something we did sometime in the past.
Right, and that's exciting too. Is that it's, you know, to your point, it's elevating the not only the data and the quality of the data, but the reach of the data, right? So, you know, if the open data kind of as the concept is just about putting the data out there, but where data really finds use is and you know, it is in its reach and how it impacts things, right? So this example of, you know, this report is in a sense open data itself, but to everyone's point here, the underlying importance is really the data that drives it. And doing a report this way, to your, you know, exactly what you're saying, Tim, is it's made people focus back on the underlying data itself, which ultimately getting access to that data is going to drive more research, more interest in what's happening in the state of Washington around salmon. It's going to drive interest, participation, citizen engagement, and ultimately further the goal of the Recovery Office, which is improving the state of salmon in Washington. So this whole process is coalescing around what open data is becoming, which is access to information, improves citizen engagement, which ultimately improves delivery of services, right? So from this, you know, that's why I think we at Socrata are so excited about this, and it sounds like you guys are as well. What kind of to shift the focus a little bit, you know, there's people who might want to repeat this process, who want to take this example you guys have set. I mean, again, you're really breaking new ground, and we've kind of danced around some of the challenges. But what do you think? Maybe Jennifer, start with you. What were some of the challenges of not having a method and a model to follow? And what did you do to address them? I think is probably kind of what people might be interested in is, you know, if you were to go back and kind of do this all over again, how would you might approach it differently that could have helped avoid or alleviate some of the challenges you guys face?
Yeah, it's a good question. We had a pretty ambitious vision. One of the things that came up right away with our partners who are doing salmon recovery on the ground was that in previous reports, they couldn't see the meaning of a lot of the data. It was rolled up to such a broad scale, and it was kind of, you know, you couldn't really tell how we got from here to there. So they really wanted to get down to, like with fish populations as an example, they wanted to get down to the population scale, or, you know, the stream reach scale, rather than looking at a whole geographic area with lots of populations, you know, bunched together and the data rolled up. They wanted to be able to see, you know, going from, you know, broad into more detail. And so, you know, we went to DFW and we said, hey, we'd like to try and do this. And they kind of went, whoa, that's a lot of work. And they were right. And that was the main challenge for us, is that then instead of having, 15 visualizations of data, we had at least 150, about 200 visualizations just of the fish populations. So, already that was pushing us into an enormous amount of charting and working with tables and going back and forth with the data providers and the partners that we work with to make sure that each salmon population number was correct for each year. So very tedious process. And so the only thing I guess I would suggest to folks is to realize what kind of expectations you might be setting up for your audiences and your consumers of the data, and that the standards will change once the transparency is available to people. So that's, in hindsight, looking at that, the sort of the mapping out of that process and the collaboration and the data scrubbing, I really, I can't stress enough how much time that took, many staff hours, many of Scott's hours, and our data source partners. So that was definitely a big challenge for us.
But to your point, doing that and doing the work, now you have provided so much more richness and depth to the information that you delivered, right? So yes, it was a big challenge. So kind of to recap, what you're saying is that understanding how you can standardize both the data types and as well as the processes of getting the data, think through that ahead of time and kind of have a plan around that, so you can be sure that the data is coming in a way that you can immediately use it without having to do too much after the fact kind of cleanup of the data.
Yeah, and there's going to be, data, we found so many things all throughout the process that could be improved. And then there's a certain point where, okay, we have to release this website, we have to release this information. So, but the release date is not the end, it's just the beginning. Now we have, okay, we're going to focus on this population over the coming months. Let's set up some meetings and have some discussions with people who are arguing. Scientists are still arguing over this data. Well, sometimes you could say data's never right. Well, there are different ways of analyzing data, there are different methods, and so let's have these conversations, but we can't have them if the data is hidden. So now we can see what it is, everybody gets excited, they want to have those meetings, and it's a longer term iterative process.
And isn't that interesting? And Tim, I think you've made some comments about this, right? That data traditionally in government has been kind of siloed and somewhat guarded. And through this process, you guys have opened this data up. You've opened it up both externally as well as internally. Tim, maybe some comments around how you've been in this business a long time. You've seen a lot of the trends in this. Perhaps some insight in how excited you are to see kind of this trending change in government of opening up data and some of the long-term impacts, both that you've seen in this project as well as kind of projecting forward if other groups do similar things as this report.
Yeah, sure. I'd start out by saying that Governor Salmon Recovery Office has really been a pioneer, over the years in kind of this move towards greater transparency around data. They've introduced a number of different tools that have just really, people were initially very skeptical about the benefits of transparency, but I think GSRO has really demonstrated this. And so one of the ironies here with this process was, that here we've got dynamic data that's displayed and available, that the Governor's Salmon Recovery Office has this history over the past several years of making available to the public, and then all of a sudden you grab it and stick it back in a static, report that only gets produced every 2 years. But going back, I think Jennifer said there's been 6 or 7 of these reports that have been produced, and back when I was working with Department of Fish and Wildlife, I was involved in production of the very first State of the Salmon report. And back then, and it's not that many years ago, you gained influence over processes by holding data close. It was a source of power, and you were, in control if people had to come to you to get that information, to get that data. And something switched. The paradigm has switched rapidly and dramatically, and now people are finding out if they're not participating, collaborating with other agencies and organizations, if they're not sharing data and sharing ideas and coordinating and collaborating, they're sitting with their data on the sidelines while decisions are being made and people are talking about what other organizations are doing. And not everybody is there yet, but I think a lot of the credit goes to the GSRO and Department of Fish and Wildlife for really kind of paving this new path and demonstrating the benefits of transparency and open data, and putting stuff out and collaborating and communicating that data in its purest form. I think everybody that's been involved and has been watching this process has made that transition.
That's really exciting, and again, part of this transition, right, is the data question is kind of a big one. As far as access to where it comes from, how we represent it. And Scott, I know you did a lot of work around the challenges of kind of the non-standardized data formats that were coming in. And kind of, again, I'd ask you a similar question I asked Jennifer. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to folks who are looking to do this, and how they would maybe prepare for the challenges of getting the data together in a format that they can be repeated and used in a way that can drive a report or something similar like this?
Sure. I think that the lesson learned, several lessons learned, but a key lesson learned with this kind of a project, because as Tim said, we really were pioneering, doing something that hadn't been done before. And we had a vision, we wanted to go to the web, fine, but what does that really mean, and how do you operationalize that, and what's the method, and all those sorts of things. The key lesson learned is you need to expect that you will be required to frequently communicate up and down the chain of command across different organizations. We had twice weekly calls, we had briefings, because really you're leading people to someplace they've never gone before. And some people are comfortable with going someplace new. Large organizations and bureaucracies that have their ranks filled with scientists and others need a bit more certainty about new ventures. And so maintaining comfort level across the organizations, across the agencies, for what this vision is going to look like and what its impact is going to be and how much effort it's going to take. It's a lot of communication and a lot of listening and a lot of encouraging and all those sorts of things. So that's a key lesson learned that I took from this. And really, as you go to, everybody says, oh yeah, I want you to use my data. Well, great. Then you say, well, this is how it's going to look on the web, and it's going to be live for everybody to see. And then you get the, oh, well, maybe I didn't really want you to do that. And so you get the, well, actually, I probably should double check and triple check and quadruple check my data because you're going to go live with it. Well, that's a good thing, actually. And we got a lot of data through the iteration that we went through with every one of these salmon populations, 200 or so. We got great data in the end. And all the data was scrubbed at a level of detail that had never been done before for this particular report. So, so two things: communicate frequently, all the time, up and down the chain of command with everybody associated with the project, and then expect that you're going to have multiple iterations of data scrubbing and data quality.
That's exciting. So what is the end result, right? So you've improved communication, you've improved quality of your data. I mean, that's, that effort right there is that end result is phenomenal, right? You you open up lines of communication, you get really good data, and then you make that data publicly available. That's really, really exciting. Jennifer, what kind of along those lines, what are some of the other benefits that you've seen from the choice to go digital and use this kind of open data, making the data available?
Well, a small but important thing is that we are going to be saving a lot of money with printing costs and graphic design costs, other things. We've got a website now. We can update it. I can update it in 5 minutes. I can add things. I can go up to data.wa.gov, change a couple numbers. The charts will change. That kind of accessibility and quick time is amazing. And the money savings is really important right now. We're having a lot of budget constraints in the state and federally. So, salmon recovery needs this right now. We need to be saving money and looking toward these efficiencies. The other piece is that the data quality, what does that mean? The data's better. Well, actually for salmon and for watershed health, that means that we are actually closer to being able to recover salmon. So our recovery partners, including the Department of Fish and Wildlife here, they are taking more ownership of this data, using it in decision-making processes, using it to communicate with other people. And what that means is actually change on the ground. So restoration project choices and priorities are different because they are informed by the data. This transparency and ability for people to access this data changes salmon recovery. It pushes it forward that much faster.
That's really exciting. So, like you said, it saved money, saved paper. I can't forget that one. That's your organization is focused on conservation of resources. So that in and of itself. So money, saving the resources of printing it, providing a better experience for citizens around the information, improving your overall effort by improving the data. And then, as you mentioned, and I think you kind of glossed over it, but I think this is just as important, as saving time and effort in the future. You've got a template now, right? And the data is being updated on an ongoing basis. So when it's time for you to provide your next report, it's not going to be a 6-month process anymore, right?
Right, and this is kind of the self-help for procrastinators, right? So if you have a report that's due in a year, you kind of go, oh yeah, I'll worry about that 6 months before it's due, or 3 months, or maybe 2 months before it's due. Well, you really don't have much of an excuse when you've got a website that you can just update, tomorrow. Somebody asked me to put a link in, and I'm thinking, okay, when am I going to do that? Well, I could do it as soon as we hang up today. I could just add that link. And I've got several salmon recovery partners that are just hungry to get their data going. And now, they want to actually compete with me and make their data more accurate and more current than mine. So, we're in this race now of who's going to get their data up first and whose data is better. And that's fantastic. That is exactly what we need in salmon recovery.
Absolutely. That's exciting. Tim, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. I think that's really an important point, and I think this is almost a best management practice for running an agency because the benefits to the organization have to be put front and center if you're launching one of these efforts. And as a former agency executive, there's a lot of responsibility in Jennifer's hands, and there's also a chance that Jennifer might not be in her job 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. Maybe, Jennifer, I'm just saying maybe. But, rather than someone walking in and picking up that coffee table book and saying, oh, that's cool, what are we going to do this time? I guess that's my responsibility now. You've got, you turn on your computer and there's the report. and the data is there, the template is there. You don't have to start over. You've got the benefit of all of Jennifer's efforts and all the work of the agencies that have gone into this initial transition, and it's there available into the future. And I just think it's, you know, I've seen too many times agencies have to stop what they're doing. Everything comes to a standstill while you regroup and try to figure out how you're going to reproduce the project because an employee has retired or moved to another position or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Jennifer, Tim, that's a great point, and that's exciting to get your input from the experience you have as you know, being kind of on both sides of this game, right? This ball, right? You've been part of the process, and now you've consulted on it. Jennifer, what has been peer? Have you gotten some peer response about this? What has been the feel within the state of Washington? Are people excited about what you do? Are they asking you questions?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions all the way from, you know, our state office of information. We're getting questions from other agencies. We're getting questions from data providers and from our salmon recovery partners at the watershed level. A lot of excitement around this and asking, how did we do this? People, you know, we just had a salmon recovery conference and there was a lot of networking opportunities, and people kept coming up to me and saying, well, how do I use data.wa.gov for my data? And can I post it there? And would anybody else use it? And yes, I mean, if people want that data, we're hungry for data in the salmon recovery field because there are so many different types of data and different variables that affect salmon. So it's really important to have a place that people can work with the data, talk about it with each other, make charts of the data and visualizations. So yeah, we're really excited about it. I do want to say, you know, again, a very special thanks to Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, because they went out on a limb. They took a great risk here, as well as our director here at the Recreation and Conservation Office in saying, yes, we're going to put our data out on this platform. It's going to be consumed by anybody and seen by everybody. And that's not easy for all data providers to do. And there's, you know, people want to control their data. And DFW, really, we value that partnership with them. And we're developing that trust with them. And over time, you know, I feel like the data is just going to become more and more accurate, better data. So another key piece that I didn't want to miss is that the messaging that this tool allows us to do is hugely important. People are obviously in a stage in our evolution where we don't sit down and read a book for 2 hours, especially, you know, legislative staff, other folks, elected officials. We don't have that kind of time. So we want to see videos, we want to see data that's really accessible and really easy to understand. This tool and the website really makes that salmon recovery message so much easier to deliver. We can post videos, we can tell our funders exactly what we're doing with their money, and they don't have to work to find it. They don't have to figure out which page or which report or, you know, have it mailed to them in 2 weeks. It's right there. So those are just a couple key points, and I hope I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. And it's exciting to see how, again, that this process of opening up data is full of benefits. It's more informative. It's giving people the answers they need. It gives them access to the information they want. I want to save time for some questions. I think we might have some audience questions here at the end. So I thought maybe we'd kind of wrap up and again, kind of in summary, talk about, you know, the benefits that you guys saw, and you know, we talked about the challenges that you face and some advice on organizations who are looking to do this. You know, maybe again, just as one last sum, if each of you had like one piece of advice on, you know, just for a couple of sentences on organizations, you know, if they want to come talk to you or if they just start thinking about this, you know, what would be that one piece of advice that each of you guys would give? maybe Jennifer start with Tim, actually, Scott, let's start with you.
Okay. Piece of advice. I mean, I think I kind of said it before. These are change projects, and they're new directions for agencies and organizations within agencies. And the advice is don't underestimate how much you need to communicate up and down the chain of command about what it is you're doing, where you're going, why you're doing it, because you need to get that trust. Because as Tim had said earlier, these are the kinds of projects that involve regional biologists, regional managers, headquarters policy people, IT staff, and you need to be a technical translator between all those people to keep them seeing the same vision because they understand the world differently.
That's great. That's great. Tim, maybe build on top of that. What would you give from an advice from a communication standpoint? How do you keep everyone informed of what you're doing and cast the vision for what's the potential here? What are the benefits?
Well, I'm going to just tell a real quick story to maybe illustrate it. Back when Salmon got listed, the governor called all the agencies together and said, okay, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. This is an extremely complex issue. Everyone's going to have to cooperate and collaborate to get this done, to recover fish, respond to the listing. I want you to come back in 2 weeks and tell me how you're going to share information and data, how you're going to work together. Everybody went away, spent 2 weeks thinking about it, came back, and everybody had the exact same solution. Every one of those 12 agencies offered to let the other 11 use their system. So it was really no solution at all. And I really think that this is, this isn't just a new technology. It's not a trend. This is going to become an expectation. It's an expectation of the public, and it's also going to become the way that governments become more efficient. The issues are so complex and complicated, it's extremely difficult for any one entity to solve all the challenges that are part of their mission. And if you don't have the ability, and if you don't have this commitment and ethic and tools to work in a collaborative and transparent state, you're not going to be meeting your core organization's responsibilities. And so I just look at this whole experience as a peek into the future, and how agencies are going to work and organizations are going to relate to the public and what the public's going to expect.
That's exciting, right? This is bettering government. This is why people work in government. This is what citizens expect of their government. Constantly looking ways to be more efficient and to deliver services better. That's exciting. Great story, Tim. Jennifer, let's wrap up with you before we take some audience questions. Do you have a piece of advice other than what you've already covered, or maybe build on top of what Scott talked about as far as the communication?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say be prepared for a lot of questions. Be prepared to have a plan about how you're going to communicate back and forth to scrub the data. Also, be flexible. Don't get stuck in thinking, oh, this chart is the only way to show this, or this developer is the only one who can help us figure this out. Try new things. Don't get stuck in the way that you're working just because you think that's easy, or people are having an expectation. Really be flexible, because this is moving quickly, and in salmon recovery, and probably in a lot of other natural resource challenges, we don't have time to mess around. We got to bring the data together. We got to get people together, looking at it, working with it, so that we can find solutions to solve the natural resource problems. So don't be attached to the old ways you've been doing things, and pay attention to what's going on with new technologies, and what people are doing to bring together data from different systems, and sharing data.
Yeah, that's exciting, right? That is what it comes down to as far as a process of communication. I mean, this is what you're building on. This is what you're looking to driving that innovation, right? I mean, you've got to communicate, you've got to be innovative, you've got to think about things in different ways, and that's all part of the opening up that data. So that's great feedback and advice. So we've got a couple of questions from the audience, and I think this is a really good one. The first is what's been the response from the public? We've talked about kind of internal peer response. We've talked about the researchers and the scientists involved here. Well, what's been the response from the public?
Well, it's been really interesting and really exciting because, I'm getting calls from students, I'm getting emails from people who, they see a project in their backyard and they're interested in learning more about it. They're able to understand the messages that we are reporting in a new way because, we worked with our partners and the data in such a collaborative way that we messaged the data in a more accessible way. And then, if they have more questions, we can show them and they can dig down deeper. So it's been really exciting to have the public, connecting back with us. I can share the website with my friends and family, and they get it right away. They don't kind of give me a quizzical look and say, well, what does all this mean? Here I'm seeing a pie chart, but I don't understand the language. I don't understand the numbers. So that's been really, really satisfying.
That's great. So they're feeling informed. They understand the information. It makes sense to them, and they can explore it a little bit too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're interactive.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that actually, this next question actually builds nicely on that, and it's asking about, have you heard stories from other peers, like and outside of your specific organization, Jennifer, starting to use open data? And maybe I'll open this up to anybody, Scott or Tim, if you guys have input on this one. But really about as you make the data open, who's using it, who's getting access to it?
So I'll just say, other agencies that we didn't work with as data sources or data providers, but they're still our partners, have been very interested in this process and engaging with us in the future, which is great because that means we'll probably have more data sources and we'll have more energy and skills and talents coming together with us to build a broader database and also to combine information and make more meaning out of more data. So that's been a really good experience too. And some agencies are kind of looking to us and asking us questions. How do you deal with records retention, and how are you getting the word out? Are you marketing? Do you have marketing strategy? All of those kinds of things. So we're getting asked questions that are surprising, that other agencies didn't already have a plan. And so it's been fun to sit down and to give presentations and to keep talking about it. There's a lot of interest.
Andrew, I can add in.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah. I'm only really most knowledgeable about state government here in Washington State. The entities that seem to use this open data platform the most are traditionally the kind of financial agencies, the demographic agencies, the agency, in this case it would be our Office of Financial Management. They have used it a lot, the tool. I've also seen that the Utilities and Transportation Commission and those kinds of people that track rates and rate structures, but not as much with the natural resource agencies. And hopefully with this as a model, more of the natural resource agencies can move towards using this kind of tool. And I wanted to go back a second to the first question about what's the public saying and public interest. Just to contribute a little bit, I would wager that with that previous report, the public interest wasn't really so interactive with the report author. as it is now. And I think that that's probably because now you can go to the web, you can look at a very high level clip of the data, you can double click on the data itself, and you can drill down to the source data, and you can drill deeper and deeper. And so I think that what Jennifer is experiencing is people actually going to the website and drilling into the data, which is actually a very good thing, because with the paper report, you sort of get the dismissive response of, oh, here is the policy people in Olympia whitewashing the data and giving us just a report. And in this case, the end product is really the process, whereas in the past, the end product has been the product. And the public, I think, is appreciative of that, and that's probably why Jennifer is getting more response from the public than has historically been the case.
Again, and such a great point, Scott. I mean, this is an interesting link, right, between open data as a concept, as most people understand it, and just making data available, and taking the availability of that data and translating it into an experience, right? Like, data comes alive when it's visualized, when you can provide some context around it. And the fact that the state's open data portal, data.wa.gov, has this additional capability of being able to take this data and build visualizations on top of it and then push it out into sites like this one, you start creating an ecosystem around the data. As people start to interact with it, and they can, as opposed to just reading, as your point, Jennifer, reading through this story that is exciting and it's cool, but it's just they're consuming it. They don't get to experience it, right?
Sure.
And shifting it in this aspect, now they get to Scott, to your point, to drill down into this information. If they want to do deeper analysis, they can get to the raw data. If they just want to visualize it in a different way, they can do that. You've empowered them with the tools and the ability to interact with it. And ultimately, if you get them more engaged, then they're going to want to get involved, right? They're going to want to maybe figure out how they can volunteer. How can I help? This is interesting to me. How can I get involved? How can I help? How as a citizen of the state, I'm passionate about this. I see the benefits for the citizens of the state to have the salmon recover and to historic levels. It's driving recreation and health of the ecosystem and all these wonderful things. So it's really neat to see the move from data as it exists in a static format to being open, and then to having these experiences built on top of the data that start to create this ecosystem where citizens become more involved and ultimately improves the lives of everyone who lives in the state. As you can tell, I get very excited about this stuff, and I'm excited to see you guys do the same. Well, let's see if we have any other questions. So I think someone's asking a little bit more specifics about the cost savings. So Jennifer, I don't know if you can share some hard numbers about the actual cost savings. I'm sure there were printing costs that you probably know, but also time costs, right? Time savings and over the long run, I'm imagining.
Oh yeah, and I think the staff here and at the agencies where we collect the data, we're still going to be having to work on the data itself and working collaboratively. There's the need for that is not going away. So my position or the positions of data stewards in other agencies, I don't think those are going to go away. I don't think we're going to be able to save a whole lot in terms of just bodies, but printing costs, definitely. I mean, we will be saving at least $10,000 every couple of years in printing, because now we have a really short summary that we send out. It's about 15 pages long with some nice photographs and some graphics that we've pulled from the website. And that, that's something that we can still hand out, but it's nowhere near what we used to print. And we did have an initial cost to hire Paladin, to hire Scott, to get this website up, to get it designed properly, and to get the templates and the coding right. Now, however, we don't know what the cost savings is going to be for the next report, because there's a lot of it that I can do. There's a lot of it that our webmaster here at the agency can do. There's a lot of it that our sister agencies providing data can do as well. So, you know, I'd like to think we're not going to spend hardly anything. I may need some help again with scrubbing data because it is incredibly time consuming. So, you know, it's hard to predict what the cost savings is going to be exactly, but I'm sure that it's not going to be what we put up front. In the past, we were spending upwards of $55,000 every couple of years to hire, you know, graphic designer and you know, folks to help with the data. And I don't think we're going to be spending that. So it's definitely saving in the printing, definitely, you know, saving now that we've got the website up.
Well, and you know, then so that's kind of the hard cost savings, right? And then there's that softer return on investment, which is taking the time that you would have normally spent on building the report and writing the content and doing all this stuff that is related but not directly affecting state of salmon, right? But
yeah.
Now you get to spend your energy focusing on to your point, the quality of the data, which that is, I mean, I would assume that's a much better use of your time to ensure that the information out there is higher quality, so you have a better picture of what's going on, and that way you can better direct your resources to the areas that need it most. So you are moving what you and your team are spending their time doing to stuff that has a more immediate impact on your ultimate goals and organization, as opposed to writing a report.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good. Fantastic.
Well said.
Well, go ahead, Tim. Do you have one more point? Have another point?
I was just going to say, you know, the paper version of the report in the agencies, starting about, you know, 3 or 4 months out, everything just came to a stop for the folks that were supposed to provide the data. And, you know, I've just been kind of thinking at the top of my head as we've been talking, but I bet it was, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 hours of labor effort, and, you know, lifetimes of stress and duress because there was this hard deadline that was approaching that everybody was focused on. And this is just such an easier process, and now that it's up is, you know, going to be so much simpler to manage and so much less heartache and headache for the agencies to bring data to the system.
Great. Well, that's a wonderful kind of wrap up point, I think, since we're coming up right against the end of our time. So I want to thank you all for this. Thank you all for the work that you put into building the report, and thanks for taking the time to share your story with us. Yeah. I know I've enjoyed it, and I believe our audience has as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.